Okay, so Richard is still on the phone, and his question was, how do you obtain a medical marijuana card? And there is a form that we have in our office, and you can stop by and get that. Basically, what it is a request for information from the state Health and Human Services, and you fill it out, and basically you ask them to send you the information. And they actually send you a packet of information that you have to fill out. And one of those pages is actually a medical questionnaire where you bring it to my office or any of the physician who will sign it for you, who does an interview with you and assesses your medical condition for the use of marijuana. And then that physician signs off on that form, and all of that information is mailed back to the state. The state actually processes it all with the money involved. I think it's like $75, $25 to get the information, $75 to complete the state form, and then they send you back the completed information with another form that a government loves form, and then you go to the DMV in Las Vegas. The DMV up here does not process the medical marijuana forms. That is done only in Las Vegas. I think there's several of them, and they fingerprint you. They do other things, and they issue a driver's license looking card. It's not a driver's license, and it's very important for you to know that. It is basically a card that looks like a driver's license that identifies you as a medical marijuana user. Did that answer that question?
Yes, what's your phone number?
Our office number is 775-751-6111, and I guess you don't have a TV, so it's at the bottom of the screen, but 751-6111 is our local phone number.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to know why I don't have a TV anymore?
Why is that?
Because several years ago, about 8 years ago, I decided that I was being really dumb, sitting there on my butt watching television while the people in the TV are having fun and making making money, and I'm not.
Oh, okay. So you got tired of supporting them.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't get to watch much TV myself, but it's definitely a fat building opportunity because you basically sit there and you're just kind of staring at a screen. And I believe there are a lot of evils involved in TV. They allowed people to come into our homes that we invited them in. They basically have altered the way we think, the way we view the world around us, and but that's a subject for a whole different conversation. So thank you for tuning in. Appreciate that. And I don't know if Richard hung up, but anybody else that has any questions about medical marijuana or anything like that, again, 727-8750 is the call-in number for that thing. I had somebody in the office today who said they were going to call in, but they didn't. So I'm going to steal their thunder a little bit because they had called a little bit about, they'd asked me about the cold and flus, which now that we're starting to get the cold season again, it's coming cold. I know Ray had asked me a question about that a couple of weeks ago and was talking about the fact that now we're starting to see more colds and flus, and why is it always a wintertime problem? Because I think there are cold patterns that actually blow viruses around in obviously in the air, and some things are airborne transmitted, but we tend to stay inside more, and when we tend to stay inside, we basically are cooped in, and so what it takes is a contagion thing where you basically are having the viruses that are basically being laid on coughing, sneezing on doorknobs, and people are more likely to contact them, touch their face, get them in there. Sneezing, if you've ever seen a picture of an aerosolized sneeze, it's an amazing amount of droplets of moisture being sent out into the periphery. You happen to be one of those people who are walking by and get that on your skin or get that in your eye or get that somewhere else, then obviously you can contract whatever it is if there is a viral load on there. But he said, well, I never really get the flu, so do I need to get the flu shot? And that's a very good question. And the answer to that is that when people ask me that, I say, well, it doesn't look like you're susceptible to the flu. So if you haven't gotten one, I don't know why you would want to change that particular pattern. So there are people like me that are in the healthcare where we're at risk of getting exposed to someone with the flu. That would be a viable reason to take the flu vaccine. There are also people who are very sick, and if they got the flu, would be at high risk of death or untold consequences. So those people might want to also get the flu vaccine. But remember, the flu vaccine is what they call passive immunity. It's a very short-lived immunity. It's basically a viral antigen which causes an immune response, and you build antibodies to that. And that ties into what we talked about, what we call cellular immunity, which is actually get the disease, and because you get the disease, you actually build up a better immune system for that. And that's a lifelong immune process, meaning if you got the mumps, you basically have a lifelong immunity to the disease. If you were to get measles, same thing, but now they give you what they call a measles live attenuated vaccine. Live attenuated vaccine. So what that means is it's a live virus particle, but it lacks some of its basically ability to reproduce. So your body gets exposed to it. It's attenuated, meaning it's not as virulent, meaning it doesn't cause all the problems. But it doesn't produce the same immune response that if you were to actually get that particular disease. And so that's why we have acellular pertussis. So that's acellular immunity. So it waxes and wanes, meaning your immune system gradually drops off. Your body loses the memory of that particular virus, but it won't if you have the cellular immunity. So the influenza virus, while it changes all the time, that's why one strain is always a little bit different than the other. That's why these virus vaccines are very, very short-lived. I know they give them to people when they go in the hospital. Anytime you're in a closed environment that can't afford to get that vaccine, you always want to be aware if you've been exposed to anybody with a cold or a flu, that incubation period is 72 hours. And so a 72-hour incubation period is that if you happen to have a loved one who is sick or has cancer or who has some immunotherapy going on, they're on prednisone, cortisone, they've got some other problems where their immune system maybe isn't as good as it could be, you would want to make sure that if you've been exposed to anybody with a cold, you avoid going in to seeing them within 72 hours. In that first 72 hours of exposure, you're basically taking in a virus, and whether you realize or not, you may not actually be infectious, but you actually can be shedding virus during the initial stages of the illness. In fact, that's probably the most likely time of spreading viruses in the first 24 hours when you're starting to develop just a few of the symptoms. You're actually shedding that virus in your nasal mucosa, in your cough, and in your things of that nature. So in the late stages of a virus infection or a cold is when your body starts having fever and starting to build up your immune response. That is, your body is now trying to fight that virus off, and that's your natural response. And as the fever rages and as the infection goes on, that actually reduces your shed of the virus, meaning that your body is actually killing the virus off. So that means that in that first 2 or 3 days, you're more likely to spread it. In the middle portions, you're less likely to spread it. And in the end of it, you certainly are very unlikely to spread that vaccine. So it's very important that you realize that the exposure is very important, being aware of who you may come in contact with to avoid spreading that to someone else who may not be able to fight it off as well as you can. So now that doesn't help you very much if you're going out to Walmart and you don't know that someone's infectious, but if you happen to have been exposed to someone and you think you might be getting sick, why don't you do the rest of the world a favor and not go out to the casino or not go to Walmart or have someone else do your shopping for you, and that could be a big proponent in helping to reduce the spread of colds and flus during this season. And a good thing to keep in mind if we ever do get hit with some type of serious pandemic where viruses and things of that nature are always out there brewing. And like I said, we talked about it before. There's some virus particles where you need a lot of virus to get that infection, and there are virus particles where you only need one virus particle. In fact, Ebola was one of those viruses where you only need one virus particle to become infected. And there are some other viruses where you need multiple virus particles to become infected. It means that explains why some people have been exposed to hepatitis C and their family but have never become infected, because even though the body makes a certain amount of the virus, for those people who have chronic persistent hepatitis, meaning they don't make a lot of virus particles, but they still can be detected in their blood, they're not going to spread that virus because it takes a lot of virus particles to get an infection. So that's a whole different subject, meaning each virus particle has its own ability, its own what they want to call infectious potential. Some of them, they're very, very infectious. They're very sticky to your substances. And that's the other part of it, which is that you actually have to have a receptor on your skin to be able to actually get that virus particle into your tissues, meaning that if you're one of those people that never got the flu, I don't care what it is, you may actually not have the actual virus receptor on your skin tissue. So that means the virus is impenetrable, meaning it cannot get inside your system. And remember, a virus needs a host. It needs a tissue to be able to grow and replicate. And if you can't get into your tissue, then it can't replicate, and therefore you cannot get infected. That's why some people will not get a cold sore while other people do, because they don't have a receptors for that particular herpes simplex type of virus. So very complex subject. I know a little bit about it, just enough to be dangerous, but it is one of those things where this is where modern medicine could be going, and it always explains the books you read about contagion, why there are some people that just absolutely do not get sick from a so-called pandemic because they don't have the receptors on their body to get the infection. So that's going to conclude our show tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and hope to see you here same time, same place next week. Thank you for tuning in.